Okay, you want to go first?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
So listen, I'm sure we all know what occurred this morning. My personal opinion is that you all know where I stand on this. Do I think justice was served? No. Where do I think justice is? I think this city is still owed an apology. And let me digress for a moment. When I came on this job, I've been a cop now for about 31 years. When I came on this job, I came on with my honor, my integrity, and my reputation. If someone accused me of doing anything that would circumvent that, then I would want my day in court, period, to clear my name. I've heard that they wanted their day in court with TV cameras so America could know the truth, even though they chose to hide behind secrecy and broker a deal to circumvent the judicial system. My job as a police officer is to investigate an incident, gather evidence, gather the facts, and present them to the state's attorney. That's what we did. I stand behind the detective's investigation. I'll let Mary Manuel comment further.
One thing is, not only do I support the hard work of our police officers, the defective units, but I'd like to remind everybody, a grand jury indicted this individual based on only a piece of the evidence that the police had collected in that period of time. So a grand jury actually brought the charges. I think on two things I'd like to say, or three things I'd like to say. One, on financial costs, this $10,000 doesn't even come close to what the city spent in resources to actually look over the camera, gather all the data, gather all the information that actually brought the indictment by the grand jury on many, multiple different charges. Second is what I would call the ethical costs. And the ethical cost is, you have as a person who was in the House of Representatives when we tried to pass the Shepard legislation that dealt with hate crimes, putting them on the books, that President Obama then signed into law, to then use those very laws and the principles and values behind the Matthew Shepard hate crimes legislation to self-promote your career is a cost that comes to all the individuals, gay men and women, who will come forward and one day say they were a victim of a hate crime, who now will be doubted. People of faith, Muslim or any other religious faith, who will be a victim of hate crimes. People that of all walks of life and backgrounds, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Now this casts a shadow of whether they're telling the truth, and he did this all in the name of self-promotion. And he used the laws of the hate crime legislation that all of us collectively over years have put on the books to stand up to be the values that embody what we believe in. This is a whitewash of justice. A grand jury could not have been clearer. To then say not only is the cost, $10,000 doesn't come cost financially, but all the other repercussions of this decision it made, to me, where is the accountability in the system? You cannot have, because of a person's position, one set of rules apply to them, and another set of rules apply to everybody else. In another way, you're seeing this play out in the universities, where people pay extra to get their kids a special position in universities. Now you have a person, because of their position and background, who's getting treated in a way that nobody else would ever, sorry about that, don't get near, I'm doing near my sermon here, that would ever get close to this type of treatment. Our officers did hard work, day in and day out, countless hours, working to unwind what actually happened that night. The city saw its reputation dragged through the mud, but I remind everybody it was not just the officers' work. That work, a piece of that work, was shown to a grand jury, and they made a decision based on only a sliver of the evidence. And as I remember correctly, somebody wanted to have that evidence in the day, as the superintendent said, their day in court, so all the evidence could be made public. Because of the judge's decision, none of that evidence will ever be made public. None of it. This is without a doubt a whitewash of justice and sends a clear message that if you're in a position of influence and power, you'll get treated one way, other people will be treated another way. There is no accountability then in the system. It is wrong, full stop.
Do you blame the state's attorney's office for this decision?
What I do want to say is the way I look at it is I commend the officers and the grand jury for their decisions.
What about
Superintendent Johnson, does Kim Fox owe you an apology too?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, our job as police officers is to present them with the evidence. The apology comes from the person that did this. If you want to say you're innocent of a situation, then you take your day in court. I would never, if someone falsely accused me, I would never hide behind a brokered deal and secrecy, period.
But you didn't have any heads up about this at all, right? I mean, you found out about this today while you were here. Is it unusual for the state's attorney to just drop a case like this without giving you guys some sort of heads up?
Well, I don't know what's unusual for the state's attorney, but we found out about when you all did.
John, wait, hold on one second. I would say one thing. From top to bottom, this is not on the level.
From the state's attorney's office, then?
I understand that piece, but I do want to get, it's not on the level, but I also want to say, and I want to emphasize, underscore what the superintendent just said. In the end of the day, it's Mr. Smollett that committed this false claim upon two individuals and who have also testified, but also on the city. One action, yes, you're looking at the state's attorney. It is not on the level from beginning to end, and there needs to be a level of accountability throughout the system, and this sends an unambiguous message that there is no accountability, and that is wrong.
They said that your other was that exact.
Don't you think this was incredibly disrespectful? You work hand in hand with the state's attorney's office and your department on cases every day. To think of the man hours your detectives spent on this and to not get at least a phone call from her office saying, hey, this is what's happening today. Personally, how did you feel about that?
Well, you know, prosecutors have their discretion, of course. We still have to work with the state's attorney's office. I'm sure we'll have some conversation after this. But again, at the end of the day, it's Mr. Smollett who committed this hoax, period. If he wanted to clear his name, the way to do that was in a court of law so that everyone could see the evidence. You all know what the bond proffer said. You know, we all know what it said. So, you know, I stand by the facts of what we produced. If they want to dispute those facts, then the place to do that is in court, not secrecy.
I want to Sarah, I want to say one other thing. Mr. Smollett is still saying that he is innocent, still running down the Chicago Police Department. How dare him? How dare him? After everybody saw, and I want to remind you, this is not the superintendent's word against his. The grand jury, a sliver of the evidence, and they came to a conclusion, as did the state's attorney's office. This is not the superintendent and the detectives department word against his. And even after this whitewash, still no sense of ownership of what he's done. He says that, in fact, he is the wronged in this case. This is an unbelievable, not just whitewash of justice, this is a person now who's been let off scot-free with no sense of accountability of the moral and ethical wrong of his actions. From top to bottom, not only besmirching the name of the city, but then I cannot stress that in a time when you have people bringing a moral equivalency in Virginia between bigots and those fighting bigotry, then you have a person using hate crime laws that are on the books to protect people who are minorities from violence, to then turn around and use those laws to advance your career and your financial reward. Is there no decency in this man?
Mr. Mayor, do you think that the state's attorney's decision was at all politically motivated?
Last question, guys.
Look,
Mayor, his attorneys say
Was
that he
the
was
decision about politically
vilified
motivated?
and this case was being made in the public.
two things. One, to the state's attorney, the question about whether it was politically motivated or not is something you have to ask them, because only they can answer their motivation. But I do know what the grand jury says, and I keep pointing you back to what the grand jury did when they saw just a piece of the data. And I think there's not a person up here who would love to have all the information made public. let alone the two individuals who also talked. Wait a second. It's not whether I do or not. That's a question that only she can answer. I can only guess at it. To your question, Cheryl, I would just, if you mind repeating it, because I tried to.
Yes. His attorney is saying that he has been vilified, that this case was, that the case against him was done in public, and he was being judged. He's
the person that brought this forward. Now, I remind you all, it goes back to also a letter. Now, he brought this case forward. He said he was a victim of a hate crime, both for his sexual orientation and for being black. The evidence came forward. A grand jury saw the evidence, realized this was a hoax on the city, a hoax on hate crimes, a hoax on people of good values who actually were empathetic at first, and he used that empathy for only one reason. Only for one. Okay, wait, just listen. I'm going to close on this. We just had one of the largest ceremonies for the police department in the history of the city. 297 men and women. Most diverse class representing all parts of this city. People from all walks of life and backgrounds and faiths who said they want to serve the city and serve the values of the city and help serve others in time and need. They are there to uphold the law, and they have their best training to do that. And I draw you in that contrast, people of all walks of life, as I said, graduates of our public schools, kids who grew up, whose parents were police officers, veterans of the armed forces who have a life of service. They were there to not only uphold the law, but the values that imbue and inform those laws. And now you have an individual who took those laws, turned them inside out, upside down, for only one thing: himself. And that, in my view, is an insult and an offense to every one of us who collectively uphold those laws, because they reflect who we are as a city, and because of the hate crime legislation that's federal, who we are as a country. Thank you.
Is the case closed, Superintendent? Can you tell us if the case is closed? Superintendent, can you tell us if the case is closed or not? Case closed?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, yes. All right.
My name is Kevin Graham. I'm the president of the Fraternal Order of Police here in Chicago. I do have a few comments to make. Last week, we asked the Department of Justice to investigate the contact that state's attorney had with a private individual, private attorney in California. We're doubling down on that. We want to make sure that the Justice Department takes a very hard look at what went on with that case and also what has occurred today. We are also asking that the letter that was allegedly sent to Mr. Smollett, that the FBI take a look at that, and the Postal Department look at that, because there are certainly federal charges that can be brought against someone who ever sent that letter. So we are certainly doubling down on our quest to find justice here. I also want to tell everyone that the detectives of the Chicago Police Department are some of the finest detectives in the world, and they did an outstanding job looking into this case and bringing it to a resolution, bringing it to it so it could go to court, and we certainly wanted it to go to court so that everybody could see what was going on.
Do you consider this a miscarriage of justice?
I do not agree with what the state's attorney did. We have not heard as to why. Certainly, I'm always interested to hear why somebody would do something, but I don't think justice was done here today.
Do you think that there's some connection to Kim Foxx's earlier discussions?
Well, I think that's why I asked for an investigation. So I asked for that investigation so that we can determine what exactly the involvement of the state's attorney is with this case. And I think that that is where we need to go. So
Specifically, what it was that you asked when you contacted the Justice Department?
we asked for an investigation saying that based on the Tribune article, that there was text messages between the state's attorney and a private attorney. Now, in diverting the case from the Chicago Police Department to a federal investigation. Now, I can tell you this as a police officer: if I directed or tried to direct a criminal investigation to go from one department to another department, I'd be under investigation. and the department would be have me sitting in a corner someplace. So I think that there's a double standard here. At this point, I'm certainly waiting to hear that we get additional information, and at that point, I'll certainly have more to say. But we haven't heard anything more at this point.
Do you think his celebrity and money had something to do with this, or do you feel like this is a dark mark, or he placed a dark mark on the Chicago Police Department in his application?
I think that that was the intention. I don't think there is a dark mark, because I do think that the Chicago Police Department and its detective division did an outstanding job of making sure that the public knew what was going on, that we brought this case to the state's attorney for prosecution. And I think that because of that, because of the work of our detectives, that I don't think there is a black mark on the city. You had a question.
Do you think, the mayor alluded to this, that his celebrity and financial means may have played a role in this, or do you think that there's something else up there, something that's politically motivated?
I think that when people have access to the finest attorneys, that they certainly can get more out of a justice system than somebody who doesn't. However, I think the facts and circumstances are clear that this should have gone to trial, and that there should have been a day in court in which Mr. Smollett could have either pled his innocent or pled guilty, depending on what he wanted to do. But I think the facts and circumstances were very clear, based on the people he was involved with, that this case was going to be a very big problem for him to win. So at that, thank you very much.
We were ready for trial. It's okay. No.
And you said the investigation has to be closed now?
Basically, because, I mean, we can't bring the same charges against